I got a project today I'm gonna be tinkering with that you'll see in a different video, but I want to answer an Ask Homesteady question that I think is fantastic. We're gonna dive into that today. This is Ask Homesteady. This is Ask Homesteady, the weekly show we do that we take time to answer your questions that you leave here on the channel. And today's question that we're gonna answer was left by Paul. Good question. Paul asked the question and he uses the hashtag Ask Homesteady. If you want to get a question answered on our weekly question answer show, put the hashtag, all one word, Ask Homesteady in your question so I can find it when I sit down to do these videos. Paul says, how do you rein yourself in when getting started so you don't bite off more than you can chew? I don't want to get overwhelmed. That is an awesome question, Paul. I'm a big hypocrite in answering this question this year because I have bit off so much this year. We've bit off way more than normal, but it's been because of necessity. Kay, well really the baby that we had this year, our fifth child, has some serious food allergies. Kay's diet is incredibly limited, and because of necessity, we said, you know what, we gotta grow way more food that Kay can eat. So we've got a lot going on and it's easy for us to be a little overwhelmed feeling. But the good news is we've been doing this a long time, so we're not really biting off more than we can chew. We're biting off a little bit more than we can chew comfortably with good manners. Picture sitting at the dinner table and like, we took one of those 2 big bites and you're like, get my napkin and just like, that's the bite we're doing right now. We're not choking, but we're just like, but how can you, when getting started, avoid being in that position or really choking yourself to death on too much stuff because you were so excited to get all the chickens? So we're gonna dive into that question today, how to get started without doing too much at once, and I have a pretty good rule of thumb, a couple good rule of thumbs that I think will help you avoid that big problem of doing too much all at once. And then we're gonna talk about what happens when you do. I think the first thing you have to realize is that everybody's biting off. Everybody's mouth's a different size. That's a gross way to explain the fact that some people can bite off more than others. So Paul, you want to identify what you can bite off versus what anyone else can bite off. And a lot of that has to do with your experience. The 3 most limiting factors to homesteading are money, infrastructure, and honestly you could argue it's really just infrastructure because money only will tell you how much infrastructure and how nice it is. So really it's just, can you afford or do you already have the infrastructure? And then experience, because I could hand you, Paul, the most perfect homestead with all the right paddocks and waterers and feeders and everything you need in the right animals, and if you have zilch experience with them, you will blow that up real fast. So you want to identify what's your experience, what's your infrastructure, and you know, money plays into that as far as how much nice infrastructure can you put in. So that will limit what you do. Giving yourself a good budget for your infrastructure projects is a good way to kind of hem that in. Recognizing that if you're a beginner in something, recognizing that you're a beginner and that these things take some skills, that's good. So just identifying the fact that like me and Kay are new to this farm, but we're not new to the homesteading life. So while in our second year we went from a couple animals to a ton of animals, we have a lot of years of experience with these animals, bringing pigs on the homestead, bringing sheep on the homestead, you know, hatching more chickens and that sort of thing. We've done it all before, so we were able to bring more at once. Doesn't mean if you've never done it before, you could bring as many your first year. So just like understanding that everyone's in a different place. Let's say you're a total beginner, Paul. You have no experience with animals and you have no infrastructure, and you have some money to spend on infrastructure. Okay, you're at baseline, you have no infrastructure yet and zero experience. How do you grow from there without biting off more than you can chew? And with that established, I want to talk about the masters of production and what we can learn from the best producers in the entire world as far as food production goes. I had this idea, I was gonna make like a cylinder rabbit tractor where they could like a hamster wheel, they could roll it themselves and go through the yard and eat grass and bugs. I think it's a cool idea. If I could figure out how to get water in there while it continued to roll, maybe you could put a nipple on the door. Kind of a cool idea, but I don't think I can figure out how to make it work today with what I have on hand. So I'm gonna go a different route with this. Always trying something new, some crazy new idea. That's part of the fun of this homesteading life. When you start homesteading, I want you to mimic the greatest producers in the world. The greatest food producers in the world, how much food they produce from nothing to tons of food for as long as they do this. I don't think there's anything better than a tree. And I talk about this in my Start Homesteading Today course, which is a free course you can take. If you click right there, join our email list, and you can take this whole Start Homesteading Today course for free. That course, I talk about how a tree is an amazing producer of fruit, or food. It starts as a little tiny seed like this, and it grows into this giant, over 20, 30 years, this giant tree that from that one seed will produce thousands and thousands of little tiny seeds, which will produce fruit trees or nut trees or whatever it is, all on their own. From one tiny little fruit seed, you can have a whole orchard. Now I know, before you go and add in the comments section, like, you're not supposed to start fruit trees from seed, you're supposed to start from cuttings. We're not talking, I'm just saying a little tiny seed can grow a huge tree that produces a ton more trees, that produces a ton more fruit and a ton more trees, and it just keeps going. So let's mimic what a tree does. A tree, if it's one of the best producers, why? Because it starts small and it grows slow. Small start, slow growing. Little tiny seed. The first year you get a little stick. The next year it's a bigger stick with a couple sticks coming off of it. The next year it's this big of a stick and it's got 3. And only by that year do you start getting the little buds and some fruit. And by year 5 you got a little bit of fruit. But what's happening that whole time is the roots are going down deep and matching what's happening on the surface. And so in 10 years, a good fruit tree will start to yield a lot of fruit after it's got really good roots and it can withstand the wind and it can withstand the different weather because it's grown slowly from small beginnings. It didn't grow too fast. If a fruit tree grows too fast and gets too much fruit at once, maybe you take a small nursery tree that already has fruit on it and you shove it in the ground, a lot of times that fruit will weigh it down and it will break and bow, and you might wind up losing the tree because it grew too much fruit too quickly. So you want to grow small, slow. And I know this is hard to do in the beginning because you want all the chickens. But what happens on a homestead when you do bite off more than you can chew? Things go wrong in a bad way. Things die, things get sick, you lose things, you lose money, you lose animals, you get angry, you don't like it anymore, you quit. So that's the danger of biting off more than you can chew. Bad stuff will happen. So grow slowly and start small. That's my general rule of thumb. Now, what does that mean to a brand new homesteader? Okay, I'm going to use those like end caps and connect the dots that I think should work. This is all new idea, brand new, seeing if this is going to work. Your first year of homesteading, starting from zero, in the course, Start Homesteading Today, I talk about the best thing to do is start with one infrastructure project one livestock, one kind of livestock. So that means you start off, you build yourself a little barn, or a little shed, or a John Siskovich chicken tractor, or you put up some fencing, and you get one animal for that. Because I know if I told you just to do the infrastructure, you're not gonna listen. You're dying to get those animals. You finally got your homestead, you want animals. So you're gonna get animals. So just go ahead and get yourself some animals and work on that infrastructure project. You're always better having the infrastructure done before the animals arrive. That's always the smarter thing to do. But for the very first thing, you're all excitement, you're all rearing to go. Go ahead, get your infrastructure project and your animals. Closely. Smart thing to do is get your, like if you're doing chickens, get the coop first and then get your chickens. The next thing you should do is another infrastructure project. I did a podcast a while ago. I don't even remember what the subject of the podcast was, but I used a story that I've heard before. Other people tell this story. This isn't my own story, of two men that were hired by a town to deliver water to the town. Now, this is just a story, it's not history. The town needed water, and so the one man grabbed a couple big buckets and he started hauling buckets from the river. And for every gallon of water, the town paid him $1. And so he hauled buckets all day long, 5-gallon bucket, 5-gallon bucket, that's $10 a trip. 10 trips a day, he makes $100 a day. Man B builds a pipeline. Day 1, he doesn't get 1 gallon of water to that city. Day 2, he doesn't get 1 gallon. He's still working on this pipeline. Meanwhile, bucket guy is just making $100, $100. Pipeline guy, day 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, still going, no money. But on day 11, bucket guy made $1,000. Pipeline guy opens the valve, water comes pouring into the city. He made $1,000 his first day, and by 2, bucket guy's out of a job. Quick little story just to show you the right infrastructure, while it will slow you down in the beginning, will speed things up in the long haul. So infrastructure, animal, and then infrastructure again. For that same animal, if you get chickens, coop, chickens, water to the coop. Now you're thinking, all right, I got a coop, I got chickens, and I got water to the coop. Now I can get, obviously I already have chickens, I can get goats because I got the water there, and I can get sheep because I got the water there. Now slow your roll. Goats and sheep are 2 different animals. Chickens and goats are 2 different animals. Cows and sheep are different. Every animal, even the batch of chickens you bought day 1 and then the batch of chickens you buy the next year are different. Because you can't put tiny baby chicks with big chickens. They'll peck and kill each other. So you can't grow too quick. Just because you have a coop and chickens now and water doesn't mean now you can go out and get more chickens. They're different size animals, different age, from different places. You need another place to put those chicks and those chickens. So the point is, if you want to grow without biting off more than you can chew, you have to match your infrastructure with your animals. And after that initial, like, I got my coop and my chickens on the same day and things were exciting, I always will tell you, do the infrastructure projects first and get them all done before the animals get there. Because if you're hauling buckets to water your cows, you will have no time to do anything else that needs done. But if you've got a frost-free hydrant and you can just turn that thing on and fill the bucket and turn it off, you'll have time to do more. And infrastructure is one of the 2 limiting things to having a homestead. Infrastructure, which is basically the money for the infrastructure, the knowledge of how to do the infrastructure right, and the experience, those are your biggest limiting factors. So if you want to have chickens and then you want to have pigs, don't go get the pigs before the infrastructure is ready. And if you just follow that rule of having the infrastructure done before the animals get there, that will naturally keep you in check. Because if you go out, you build one little barn, and then you go and buy 5 different kinds of animals, you're going to be in trouble. There's a lot of learning curve with animals. We try to add only one new kind of animal every single year to our homestead if we've not done that animal before. Now this year you see we've added a ton, but we've had sheep before, we've had pigs before, we've had chickens before. The only new animal we added to the farm this year was the camel. So if every year you just add one new animal, so you have time to learn about that animal, figure out how that animal works, where the problems are, what's going to go wrong, what did you not realize when getting into this animal was going to be a problem. If you do that, one new animal a year, and always build the infrastructure before the animal's there and have it ready, that will keep you generally in check, and it will prevent you from biting off more than you can chew. Now, what's going to happen, Paul, over time? Your first year, you're going to do just chickens and you're going to do just infrastructure. And then the next year, you're going to do a new infrastructure and add pigs. And before you know it, you're going to get some confidence and you're going to want to grow faster. And you're not going to worry about what Awesome Homesteady thinks anymore. You're just going to grow at the rate that it works for your family. And you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to get more, and you're going to get more, and you're going to get more. And then you're going to have a year where you do bite off more than you can handle. What's going to happen? I'm going to explain to you what will happen when you do that inevitably. But first, let's do a Homesteady Camel Train shout out. And today's Camel Train shout out goes to Lance and Christy. And they're from Knight's Helm Farms. Lance and Christy just moved from California to Texas. They bought 15 acres and they are at the very beginning stage of their homestead. So what a perfect video to be doing a Camel Train shout out for Lance and Christy, talking about what to do at the beginning. They say, we will be an alpaca farm that offers tours and special event location. This is like so perfect. They just moved in December and Christy writes, we need to build barns, coops, garage, shop, greenhouses, and start the garden. A lot to do, but excited. They've already cleared 4 acres and they're going to share this on their YouTube channel, which is now live. Click there. Please go and say hi to Lance and Christy on their YouTube channel. As of right now, let me see how many subscribers they have at their YouTube channel. As of right now, they have 24 subscribers. I would love it if we could get them to 100 subscribers. So go check out what Lance and Christy are doing on their new YouTube channel. Let's see if we can get them to 100 subscribers today to say thank you from Homesteady for them for sponsoring today's episode of the Homesteady Camel Train. It's 100 days of 100 videos, daily videos, all about growing your own food and homesteading and how to do it. Lance and Christy, this video is a great one for you guys to remember. Don't try to do too many animals at once. Focus on those infrastructure projects. One of the things I thought of while doing this shout out, Lance and Christy talked about everything they wanted to do and they listed all their infrastructure projects. That's where you want to go overboard. If you are planning on doing a big homestead and one animal a year and one infrastructure a year project isn't enough, double down on infrastructure. The beautiful thing about infrastructure is if you go and you put in a barn and you're like, I want to do more, let's put in water lines. And you start water lines and then halfway through you're like, oh man, this is too much. Just pause. You don't have to finish your water lines. The water lines aren't going to die if you don't finish them. But if you're like, oh man, I want to do more, let's get chickens and pigs, and then you're like, ooh, this is too much, the pigs will die if you just abandon them. So actually, no, let's be honest, pigs aren't going to die. The pigs are going to bust out, roam free, and you're going to have wild pigs running around. If you're in Texas like Lance and Christy are, you're going to add to that wild pigs in Texas problem. I know Lance and Christy aren't going to do that. They're going to have the wild alpacas. Thank you guys for sponsoring this episode. So now let's talk about what happens when you actually bite off more than you can chew as a homesteader, because it's going to happen eventually. As you get more comfortable with homestead life, you're going to develop a good rhythm. You're going to get better. You're going to go a little faster. It's like riding a bike, right? When you first ride a bike, you go slow because you have to go slow. Because if you don't, you fall and you cut your face. The next time you ride a bike, you go slow because you're afraid to go faster because you're afraid you might fall and cut your face. The third time you ride a bike, you start to go faster. And then you go faster and faster and faster and faster, and then you start going off jumps. And if you're a kid like I was, I don't know, do kids still make ramps out of wood with their buddies, or are they all just playing those video games these days? Kids today. You're making ramps, you're going off ramps, and you're flipping ramps, and you're jumping and you're doing little moves, and then, oh man, you're catching a peg on something, and you're flipping your bike and you're getting all busted up. That's what happens with homesteading. You get a rhythm, you get balance, you know how you do it, you get better, you go further, you get better, you go faster, and then you're doing a kick twist and you catch one of your spokes or one of your pegs on something and you eat it. And that's what's gonna happen. Paul, you're gonna grow and you're gonna get to the point where you're going and going, and then you're gonna bite off more than you can chew. And I already said what's gonna happen, right? Things are gonna die and it's gonna be bad. And that's true. When you bite off more than you can chew, you might have animals die. And things are gonna fall apart, and you're gonna get frustrated, and infrastructure you made is gonna break and turn out to be not as good as it was. And you're gonna have a year where you're like, oh man, we bit off more than we could chew. This is too much, this is all too much. And you're gonna list some animals for sale on Craigslist because you're gonna be like, we gotta get rid of these, I can't handle all these animals. And you're gonna say, I'm never getting these animals again because these ones were a real problem. And you're maybe gonna get all your animals sold, and maybe you're gonna say, we're done homesteading forever. And then a year's gonna go by, and you're gonna be like, oh man, homesteading was really fun. And then another year is gonna go by, and you're gonna be like, why don't we get chickens again this year? We still have the old coop. Chickens weren't so bad. And you're gonna start again, and it's gonna go from there. That guaranteed happened to people in the comment section. Let us know if that was you. You grew big, you got overwhelmed, you sold it all, and now you got chickens again. Some version of that will happen to you, Paul. You might not get rid of all your animals. You might not sell everything on Craigslist. We've been there where we got some animals sold. Every time for us, it's been goats. Every time it's been like, that's it, we got to get rid of animals. We sell the goats, and it's like, oh man, we're okay now. Why did we ever get goats? Because we know what happens when we get goats. We want to stop homesteading. So you're gonna go through ebbs and flows. If you look at any chart of anything ever that grows over time, look at a S&P 500 stock market chart. You're gonna see it goes like this, it goes like this, it goes like this, it goes like this. It's a natural part of life. The great producers, the trees that I talked about, they grow big some years, they grow less other years. Other years they get hit by electricity and they lose a limb and things break, and sometimes they die altogether, but their seedlings come up around them and keep growing. So the point is, Paul, eventually there'll be a time where you do too much, but your natural rhythm, your family's homesteading lifestyle will ebb and flow, and you'll shrink down and you'll find a good balance again, like bike riding, and you'll go and you'll pick up bike riding again and you'll ride again. So try to start slowly and small in the beginning. Try to grow with that infrastructure first, then an animal, one new animal a year, and then a garden, infrastructure before the animals every time. If you want to double down on something, double down on infrastructure, not animals. Let yourself have enough time to learn. Remember, it's easy, especially when there's a worldwide pandemic, to like panic buy all the animals, but it takes a long time to get good at these animals. And even if you went out and bought all the animals right now, if you don't know what you're doing, you can lose them, you can have them die. So just having the animals isn't gonna feed your family. It's the experience, the infrastructure, the knowledge of how to use it and work it together that will feed your family. So don't rush out like, I gotta have everything right now. Just get some chickens. You'll get meat and eggs from those chickens. Have your infrastructure in place. Have a little bit more infrastructure, then add on your next thing the following year. We've been growing like that over the last decade. Some years we have sold things and shrunk, and other years we've exploded. But look at where we are. Over the trend, if you follow the S&P 500 or you go to the Homesteady 500, despite some years being lower than the previous year, the overall trend is up in production, up in animals, up in infrastructure, up in homestead happiness. And that's what I want for all of you. That's why I do Ask Homesteady. I want to help all of you have an upward trend in sustainability, an upward trend in production, an upward trend in happy stability from your homestead. That's what Homesteady is all about. So if you like the fact that we do Ask Homesteady, we take one video every week to answer your questions specifically, take our course. It's free. Click there, join the email list. You'll be able to take the Homesteady Start Homesteading Today course. I hope that helps you, Paul, and anybody else watching. We'll see you in tomorrow's video. Now I gotta finish this Rabbit Tractor 1.0.